and from Romney rival to loyal surrogate and potential running mate. Joining me now, former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty. Governor, thanks so much for being with us. I'm sure you just love hearing all this speculation. You've been there, done that before. We spent a lot of time 4 years ago when you were on the short list, and then John McCain surprised everybody with Sarah Palin. How does it feel to be going through this again?
Well, there's a little bit of deja vu, I suppose, to all the speculation, Andrea, but as Chris mentioned, there's an inverse correlation, but I would add the inverse correlation is probably the level of interest is directly correlated to how close you are to Washington, D.C. The rest of the country's in the middle of the summer and probably thinking about other things, but what they are thinking about is this troubled economy and the fact that we got so many of our neighbors and people across our states and across the country are unemployed or underemployed or have given up work and looking for work, and President Obama's presidency is up for renewal. And I think the country should look at that and say he didn't get the job done, didn't live up to his word, didn't keep his promises, and look for a new and better direction under President Romney.
What Governor Romney said today to the National Review was that in some cases he looks at people who provide perspectives and skills that I may not share. What perspective and skills could you provide that he might not share?
Well, we at the Romney campaign have a policy of not talking about the VP process in particular, Andrea. But look, any team, whether it's president, vice president, you want to have different ingredients, different dynamics. And one of those dynamics is making sure you have a skill set that complements each other in some ways. There's other considerations, too, obviously geography and philosophy and abilities and skills and backgrounds. So there's a lot that goes into it. And one ingredient might be, as I think Governor Romney alluded to this morning, having somebody who might bring something to the table that supplements, one of his either strengths or weaknesses.
Well, some people describe you as a Sam's Club Republican, that you've got working class roots, that you weren't born to wealth. Is that one aspect that he clearly is lacking just from biography?
Well, you could go down the list of the speculated people on the VP list and make an argument that they've got some attributes or experiences that complement Governor Romney's in some way. But as Chris Cillizza just mentioned, it's mostly just speculation and an interesting, discussion, but it really doesn't get you anywhere. For me, I'm committed to Governor Romney, not because I think I was looking to be vice president. I've said many times I think I can best serve him in other ways, but anybody would be honored to be asked. But the real issue here isn't necessarily the particulars of a VP candidate. The issue is, does Barack Obama deserve re-election? And we have 23 million Americans unemployed, underemployed, given up looking for work. He made all his big promises. He didn't fulfill it. He hasn't done a good job as president. He doesn't deserve re-election. And I think Mitt Romney's time is now.
One of the big debates right now is over the taxes. How many years of taxes did you provide to John McCain 4 years ago?
Well, I don't remember the specific number of years, Andrea. I know I provided some tax returns going back a number of years, but I don't know if it was 3 or 5. I don't think it was probably more than that.
Do you think that 2 years is enough? So far only 1 year, but to promise to provide 2 years is enough. It's not what Governor Romney's father laid out when he did 12 years, and he was running back in 1968. And it's become such a big issue. Even Haley Barbour, George Will, Bill Kristol, leading Republicans say, just do it already. Put the taxes out there. Take this issue off the table.
Well, Mitt Romney has released, as you noted, 2 years' worth of tax returns, and that's basically been the standard for Republican nominees for president. So
that's
when there's no allegation or insinuation of wrongdoing, or any time that he's been in trouble or accused of wrongdoing, why would Mitt Romney be held to a different standard than almost every other Republican nominee for president? I think going back a couple of years is reasonable.
There's been a lot of nastiness in this campaign and combativeness on both sides, not just the negative advertisements back and forth, but again on a conference call today. There's been criticism of the Democrats for a couple of days ago, what happened on a conference call. Now today, former Governor Sununus from New Hampshire, whom you know very well, suggested that he said that President Obama, the president, needs to learn what it's like to be an American. And then he said, I wish that the president, I wish the president would learn how to be an American. Now, later, when it was pointed out to him, apparently, he said, well, if I said something that suggested something I didn't mean, then I apologize. He said he was trying to explain that the president, in his view, doesn't know how the American economy works, how American jobs get created. But is that the kind of rhetoric that you want to hear in this campaign from either side?
Well, Andrea, it's a good question, and I think you've summarized the series of events and the sequence of events very well. Governor Sununus made those comments earlier today. He then clarified and walked back those statements by saying he meant that President Obama really doesn't have a familiarity with what it means to be in the American entrepreneurial and private enterprise system, early stage capital formation, deployment, and comments to that effect. So I think he clarified it. And obviously, Governor Sununus has a knack for colorful language and can be very informative and entertaining. This one, he admitted perhaps he wasn't as clear as he should have been and issued a clarification. And I think that was appropriate under the circumstances.
What vice presidents do you admire when you look at running mates at teams? Is it Al Gore and Clinton? Is it Cheney and George W. Bush? Who in the past, is it George Herbert Walker Bush and Ronald Reagan? What's your role model for what a good vice president should be? Is it Joe Biden?
I haven't really given that a lot of thought or studied the dynamic or synergies between the vice president and the president in years gone past. I'd want to give that some thought and give you a more thoughtful answer. But just off the cuff, Andrea, I would say if you look at the relationship that Ronald Reagan had with George Bush, H.W. Bush, that seemed to be a healthy and dynamic and constructive relationship. I'm sure there are others, but just off the cuff, that would be one that would be worth further review and study. It seems like they had a good relationship and a good partnership.
And people are talking about Senator Portman, one of your colleagues, because of Ohio and the importance of Ohio. Clearly, Minnesota is not considered a swing state here. It's when was the last time it actually voted for a Republican?
1972, Andrea, is the answer. It's the longest unbroken streak of voting for Democrat of any state in the nation, including Vermont, Massachusetts, Hawaii, and California. So I love my state. It's filled with great people, but it unfortunately has the longest unbroken streak of voting for Democrat for president of any state in the nation.
And you were reelected, and won twice, but you didn't break 50%. So nobody's arguing that you're going to bring Minnesota's electoral votes to the table necessarily if you're on the ticket. What role should geography, should the electoral map play in this, do you think, in the Romney calculus?
Well, first of all, let me say Rob Portman and Jane Portman are wonderful people, and I have the utmost respect for them. And obviously, both them and other people that are being speculated about have a lot of talent and skill. And Governor Romney's going to have a great list of people to pick from. There's a lot of deep bench strength in the conservative movement, the Republican Party, and other names that you mentioned earlier in the show, and others as well. As to Minnesota, Republicans can win here under certain circumstances, as my elections demonstrated. I didn't break 50%, as you noted, but I also was running in a race with 3 and 4 candidates, so getting in the mid and high 40s isn't such a bad result under those circumstances. But Minnesota can tilt Republican in certain years. And then beyond that, geography is one of many factors that a candidate might look at, but again, we don't get into the details, the timing, and the particulars of the VP process.
I'd be remiss if I didn't, if I let you go without asking, have you gotten the call?
Which call is that, Andrew?
Well, the call from Boston or Wolfboro, New Hampshire, or from Governor Romney?
Well, I'm in contact with Governor Romney from time to time, but this week I'm focused on some yard work and some business things. But look, the process will unfold in due course. I'm sure Governor Romney and his team will let you all know when the announcement's coming, but that's not something that I can comment on.
Understood. Thank you very much. It's always good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Andrea.
And up next.